There have been many dynasties in the NBA, from the Celtics in the 60s to the Lakers in the late 90s and 2000s, but the most recent dynasty belongs to the Golden State Warriors. One of the oldest franchises at 78 seasons, the Warriors played their first seasons as the Philidelphia Warriors in the Basketball Association of America in the year of 1946. And yes, fun fact, they did win the championship that year. 3 years later, they would join the NBA and continue their dominance by winning a second championship before moving to San Francisco in the year 1962. They would remain that way until changing their name to what we know it as in the year 1971. This episode of Case of Franchise GOAT is going to be much different than the ones we've had before. Golden State has a lot of Hall of Fame players, and it's actually one of the franchises with the most championship trophies ever. It's actually one of the least impoverished teams, if you saw in my poverty index video. And there are 12 players with the highest win shares. 10 are in the Hall of Fame, or will be at some point, and that doesn't account for the other host of fan favorite players who have played in a Golden State jersey. From Baron Davis to Wilt Chamberlain, this one's going to be a long one, so let's get down to it and find out who is the greatest player in Golden State history. Yo, what's up everybody, it's your boy 2KJ here, and on today's episode of Case for Franchise GOAT, we're going to do a dive into the history of the Golden State Warriors and find out who is their greatest player ever. If you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and put what you think down in the comment section below. Ring that bell, and without further ado, let's look at our GOAT pyramid and see just the sheer volume of players we are working with. Now, I know what you're going to say. What in the world are Klay and Draymond doing in the fan favorite tier? They should be all-timers. And usually, if this were any other team, you would be right, except the fact that all of the guys in the all-time status outrank them in win shares by a very, very large margin. And like I was saying before, these guys are all Hall of Famers. Klay and Draymond will very likely find their way into the Hall of Fame, and you could argue that, these guys played against plumbers and firemen, so it's a little bit different, but these guys are all all-timers who at one point were first options for the Golden State or Philadelphia Warriors and either led them to the finals, won a finals, or got them right to the doorstep. This is a very, very important thing because, as you see, we have a lot of players and I really need to distinguish them in some way. Now, let's go from top to bottom. We have the GOAT status. Obviously, it is Steph Curry. He stands alone as the greatest player in Golden State history, and it's not even really close. I'm not going to sit here and act like any of these other players can. However, I do want to make a point as to show how good Wilt Chamberlain was and how much better Steph Curry has been, just sort of comparing their careers as a Warrior. Now, like I was saying before, going to the bottom, we have a face people probably might not know. That is Rick Barry. We have Neil Johnston, Paul Arzon. We have Nate Thurmond, another Hall of Famer and a legend for Golden State. And we have Wilt Chamberlain. I'm sure you guys all know who Wilt Chamberlain is. Down to the fan favorites tier, we have Run TMC. I'll explain about that in a little bit more if you guys don't know who those guys are. Baron Davis, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and my GOAT, my greatest player in Golden State history, Kevon Looney. If you know who Kevon Looney is, you know he's the GOAT. Right? I didn't want to make this video about Kevon Looney. I didn't want to, go on a whole 30-minute tirade about how great Kevon Looney is. I'll keep it to 30 seconds or less. But if you know how great Kevon Looney is, you know that he's the GOAT. Now, anyway, let's start off here in the fan favorites tier and work our way up. Now, like I said before, I'm going to start with Run TMC. These guys are a very, very important part of the 90s Warriors culture, and I'm sure a lot of 90s Warriors fans know and love all of these guys. So like I was saying before, they all formed a core in the early 90s Warriors, and Run TMC consisted of all-stars Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin. Now, Chris Mullin specifically was the first one. He was drafted to the Warriors and was essentially a lifer, playing his best years there, including 5 straight All-Star appearances and 4 All-NBA selections. He would be joined by Richmond in 1988, the 5th overall pick in the draft, who would play his best seasons in Sacramento, but got his hotshot start on the TMC Warriors. The next year, they would get their final member in the trio of Tim Hardaway, a player we've already covered in these Case for Franchise GOAT episodes. As a matter of fact, it was just in the last one for Miami Heat. If you haven't seen it, go watch it after this video, of course. Of the trio, the only one of them to play most of their career there was Mullin, which is why he's one of the most loved Warriors players ever, and honestly is on the line for me in the fan favorite tier and all-timer tier just because of how loved he is. But like I was saying, if this were a different episode, he might have gotten the nod, but unfortunately it's just too jam-packed for him to make it. But he definitely gets his flowers as one of the best Warriors players and one of the most loved. You can make a legit argument that his 6-year prime run heralded as one of the best players in the league pretty much. Now, Richmond and Hardaway are both incredible players, but they played their best seasons on other teams, so I feel like they fit here perfectly in the fan favorite tier. But all three are no doubt Warriors legends. Now, next, we're going to skip over Baron Davis for a little bit and talk about two guys that I know you are itching to know why exactly I put here. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Now, everybody, let's take a deep breath before I explain why they fit here. Breathe in, breathe out. All right. Now, let me cook. Now, like I was saying before, there are a lot of Hall of Famers on this list, and a lot of Bisuna Hall of Famers as well. But when your ceiling is Wilt Chamberlain for the all-time tier, it sort of makes it hard to put these guys in here who really don't match up accolade-wise. Now, do not get me wrong, Klay Thompson is inarguably one of the best shooters we have ever seen pick up a basketball. One half of the legendary Splash Bros, Klay was drafted with the 11th pick in the 2011 NBA draft and would immediately make an impact for the Warriors, giving budding star Steph Curry a reliable backcourt mate that could not only just score, but shoot like nobody's business. As a rookie, Klay shot 41% from the three and would maintain that number 9 out of the 10 seasons he's played in his career. His breakout year would coincide with the Warriors' breakout year. This is in 2015. He would not only help the Warriors win the chip, but also get his first All-Star nod and All-NBA third team. He would match this feat his next year in 2016, while also winning the three-point contest and putting on one of the most electric Game 6 performances ever in the Western Conference Finals to save his team and help them come back 3-1. Now, we know what happened after that, but that's not really important. But we know that Klay would go on to win 3 more championships and make 3 more All-Star teams, and I'm sure he doesn't really mind that 2016 loss too much. But, like I was saying before, I can't really put him too much higher because he lacks the All-NBA first team selections. He really lacks a lot of the other accolades some of these other guys have, and that's the same reason why his teammate, Draymond Green, also fits here in this tier. Now, he's known not for his offensive ability, but his ability on defense. We all know today that Draymond has been an integral piece to Golden State winning their championships, but he has also been integral to them having some not so memorable moments. Besides the, getting suspended in 2016 and knocking Jordan Poole out, he has been the defensive stalwart and enforcer of this Golden State dynasty. Green was an outstanding defensive player at Michigan State, and this transferred over when he was drafted with a 35th pick in the NBA draft in 2012. Green mostly played a bench role his first 2 seasons, posting 7.7 points and 10.2 points respectively. While his offensive game wasn't really anything to write home about, he was an excellent defender and rebounder, averaging over 8 rebounds a game in both of those seasons. But just like his other 2 co-stars, his breakout season was in 2015, where he averaged 13 points and 9 rebounds, helping the Warriors win their first NBA championship in a long while. He would make his first of 4 NBA defensive first team selections this year, while also tacking on 4 more second team selections and a defensive player of the year award in 2017. He would serve as a massively important lockdown defender in this Golden State dynasty, and his ability to facilitate the ball in his later seasons provided the Golden State offense with a very unique player who could run the offense on one end and get blocks and steals on the other one. Now, Draymond Green actually, this is a very little known thing, he actually was the steals champ at one point, averaging 2.2 a game in 2017. That's also the year he won his depoy. Now, with 4 All-Star selections and 4 championships, there's no doubt Draymond is very likely going to get into the Hall of Fame as long as he continues being good. He may have some unfortunate baggage, but him and Klay will no doubt get their jersey retired and no doubt be all-timers for this team. Now, the next 2 players are on this list for very similar reasons, and it's because of their impact to the fans as a whole during this time. Now, I put Baron Davis' face here, but Baron Davis and more the We Believe Warriors as a whole were a very, very important time in the Warriors' lifespan during the early 2000s, and that 2006-2007 series, they basically put the whole city on their backs, upsetting the Dallas Mavericks, and doing what basically the team had not done in a long while, which was give the city hope. And also, Kevon Looney is on this list because he's my GOAT. He's actually one of my favorite role players of all time. I'm not going to go all day about him, but he is incredible. He is very, very important to this Warriors squad currently, and is the reason that they basically have anybody employing the center position as a whole. But enough of Kevon Looney. Let's move on to where things get a lot more black, white, and gray. Starting off here, I want to talk about Rick Barry. Now, in my opinion, he's one of the most interesting players in NBA history, and it's because he's a really quirky player. He was mostly known for his underhanded free throw form that would net him the 4th highest free throw percentage for a career of all time. And he was one of those players that, just like Chris Bosh, is almost forgotten by time. When people discuss the most elite players to ever play this game, I rarely see his name ever brought up, which is really odd because he was not only an elite scorer in his era, but won a championship in both the NBA and the ABA as a number 1 option, averaging over 30 points a game for both seasons. He was drafted to the San Francisco Warriors with the 2nd overall pick, and in between playing with them and holding out and playing in the ABA, he put together a Hall of Fame career in both leagues, being an 8-time All-Star in his 8 years with the Warriors and averaging an unreal amount all of the way through. He averaged 25.7 points per game as a rookie and said that's not enough, and averaged 35.6 points per game in his next season. Well, that's his 2nd year in the league, by the way. And that's not even all. His most complete season would come in 75, where he would lead the league in free throw percentage, shooting 90%, while leading the league in steals with 2.8, was 6th in assists with 6.2, and scored 30.6 points per game. His scoring and choice to move away from the basket, thus becoming one of the first point forwards in history, would lead his Warriors back to the finals, where they would capture his 2nd championship trophy and his finals MVP. While he never won a regular season MVP, Barry's skill on the court was unparalleled by most, and he was on the 50th and 75th anniversary team. And he got his jersey retired by the Warriors, and those exact reasons is why I feel like he deserves an all-time spot on this list. Now, another player that's almost forgotten by time, but for a completely different reason, Paul Arizin was one of the greatest players in the 1950s, and a career that might have been even greater if not the 2 lost seasons to the War in 52 and 53. Another Philadelphia native to play for the Warriors, there's a lot of them on this list, Arizin had a game very similar to the way modern basketball is played today, and it led him to being an offensive monster during his time, averaging 22.8 points per game for his career and a high of 28.9 points per game in the playoffs during his finals winning season. Noted as the greatest 1-2 punch in NBA during his time, he was a 10-time All-Star, 3-time NBA first team, 2-time NBA scoring champ on 3 anniversary teams, and was an NBA champion. All of these accolades with the Warriors. Sometimes it's hard to rate players that played in an NBA that's so different from today's, but Arizin's game is very similar and honestly was far ahead of its time to what the modern NBA is like. He had an offensive game that in today's probably could have been even better. And for that reason, I want to include him on my list because not only is he a Hall of Famer and all-time player in his own right, he was integral to the Warriors winning the chip in 1956 and has incredible accolades, especially stacking up against some of the other great players on this list. But remember how I said that Arizin was known as one half of the greatest 1-2 punch in the 50s? The other half is Neil Johnston. 6'8" and another Hall of Famer, Johnston got the chance to play in the Philadelphia Warriors via tryout, a move that would turn the Warriors into legit contenders. Another Philadelphia native, again there's a lot of them, with Johnston going up from putting 6 points per game in 51 to 22.3 in 52, he will continue his incredible scoring when Arizin returned from the war and would join him in winning a championship in 1956. In his career, he'd be a 6-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA first team, 3-time scoring champ, and a rebounding leader to boot. Another player that has the kind of stuff you see in today's game, Johnston was an elite player that knew how to score like nobody's business. And just like how I explained with Arizin, it's the exact same reason that he is on the all-time tier. They were both integral to winning their championships, and they were both incredible players that arguably were the first options on their team at the exact same time. Another all-time legend for the Warriors, Nate Thurmond was drafted 3rd overall to the San Francisco Warriors in 1963, a team that also sported legend and Hall of Famer Wilt Chamberlain, who we'll touch on in a little bit. Now, Thurmond averaged 17 rebounds a game at Bowling Green, and if that was any inclination of what he was going to do in the pros, yeah, they got a Hall of Famer off the jump. Now, his task was to take the load off their superstar and put another big on the court that could put the ball in the basket. Who they got was a Hall of Famer at doing exactly that. Thurmond had a productive first season, averaging 7 points and 10.4 rebounds, but after Wilt left town the next year, he blossomed into a superstar for himself. His next 4 years, he would average 18.1, 18, 21.3, and 22 rebounds a game, even holding the record for the most in a quarter with 18. His Warriors years were his most elite, finishing second in MVP voting to, guess who, Wilt Chamberlain, and leading the Warriors to the finals with fellow Hall of Famer Rick Barry in 1967, averaging 15 points and 23 rebounds in the 15 playoff games. Even though they'd be defeated by, guess who again, Wilt Chamberlain, Thurmond was a force to be reckoned with on the boards, being known as one of the greatest rebounders of all time and as one of 4 people to record 40 or more rebounds in a game and one of 5 people to average at least 15 rebounds a game for their career. He got his number retired for the franchise, cementing himself as one of the all-time greats for the San Francisco Warriors and an all-time great easily on this list. Now, the last player I want to talk about on this tier is obviously Wilt Chamberlain. Now, Wilt, by all accounts, is one of the greatest freaks of nature the NBA has ever seen. Easily. He's like something out of a video game. A player with an unbelievable height and athleticism in a time where supposedly plumbers and firemen roam the courts. As a high schooler, there's footage of him doing some truly mystifying things, and in college, his legend somehow grew even more. After the NBA wouldn't let him become a professional player, he would join the Harlem Globetrotters, where he would go on to play some of the most fun basketball in his career. The next year, he would finally be eligible to play in the National Basketball League and would be selected 3rd overall in the 1959 draft to the Philadelphia Warriors as the territorial pick. Due to him being undoubtedly the best prospect on the planet, he would receive the highest contract in the league as a rookie. Now, let me just say that one more time, just in case you didn't understand. He has the highest contract in the league. He just got drafted. The whole league. This is unprecedented. This would never happen in today's game, and it really goes to show how unbelievable Wilt was. In his first career game, he would score 43 points and grab 28 rebounds in his first game. He is making these literal grown men look like babies out there. It's insane. Today, we know who Wilt Chamberlain is. So it's crazy, but it's not as crazy. But you have to think about, back in 1959, they had no clue players could do this kind of stuff. They had absolutely zero clue. He did unreal things on the court, scoring 23 points and 25 rebounds, en route to winning the All-Star Game MVP award, and then would not only drop a 50 bomb with 40 rebounds that season, but would go for 58 points and 42 rebounds in a win against the Detroit Pistons. Even as a rookie, he battled against legendary center Bill Russell, putting together a rivalry that to this day still stands as one of the best in history. In his first NBA season, Chamberlain averaged 37.6 points per game and 27 rebounds, breaking the all-time regular season scoring record in only 56 games, in addition to 7 other records just that season. Calling Wilt a prolific scorer is somehow an understatement, and his legends would begin to grow even more in the coming years. After suffering a defeat to the Boston Celtics, in which he was doubled and sometimes even triple teamed, Wilt considered retirement, citing he was tired of getting constantly battered and harassed on the court due to how unstoppable he was, but the salary increase to $65,000 would easily bring him back. In his second season, he would somehow exceed his first by averaging an unreal and to this day an NBA record 50.4 points per game and 25.7 rebounds, scoring 4,029 points, and unsurprisingly, it's the most in NBA history. Even more, the Warriors played a total of 3,890 minutes in their 61-62 season. You want me to tell you how many Wilt played? He played in all but 8 of them. In his 62 season, it's probably statistically the best in NBA history by a plethora of metrics, but its crowning achievement was his 100-point game on March 2nd, 1962. He went 36 for 63 from the field and made a surprising 28 of his 32 free throw attempts in a score that still stands today as the single highest scoring game of all time. But none of these accolades would matter if he couldn't beat his demons, and those demons were the Boston Celtics. Once again, he would match up with them in the conference finals, and once again, after making huge plays all series and tying the game at 107 with 16 seconds left, in Game 7, Celtics legend Sam Jones would hit a clutch shot with 2 seconds left to win the game. The next season, the Warriors would relocate to San Francisco, and in doing so, actually lose some of their Hall of Fame core in the process. Paul Arizin would choose to retire instead of moving, and their head coach would also just straight up decide to resign instead of moving as well. Due to their absence, Wilt put up a 44.8 point, 28 rebound season due to pretty much being the sole option on the team, but he didn't make the playoffs due to losing most of the team's talent. The next year, however, would be different. Finally free of having to deal with the Celtics into the finals and getting Hall of Fame rookie Nate Thurmond to help lighten the load, the San Francisco Warriors would win 48 games, win their division, and finally defeat the St. Louis Hawks in a 7-game thriller to advance Wilt to his first NBA Finals, where he would unsurprisingly, unable to escape his demons, play the Boston Celtics once again. And just like they always did, it would not be a contest. They would defeat him in 5 games, and Bill Russell would once again have the edge over him, and this season being his last full year as a Warrior. And ironically, he would actually get traded back to Philadelphia, where he, surprise, surprise, was from, and his legend would only go from there. But all these years as a Warriors still produce records that have stood and very likely will stand the test of time. And if there's anybody who can really outrank him as the GOAT, it's the actual GOAT. The greatest player in Golden State history, and honestly, one of, if not arguably, the greatest point guard to ever play the game of basketball, Stephen Curry. Steph Curry is the Golden State Warriors. It's rare that you see a player come to define an entire franchise, but every once in a while, a generational talent comes around and does just that. The first son of Del Curry, a known shooter in his time, Steph would show great promise in high school before making a name for himself at Davidson College. After putting together a college career that would net him 2-time SoCon Player of the Year nods and a retired jersey at Davidson, he would go on to be the 7th overall pick in the draft to the Golden State Warriors. In a very famous draft gaffe, yes, I'm going to talk about this, the Timberwolves not only missed out on him once, they missed out on him twice. They had 2 picks, and they did not pick him either time. Just gonna let that set in. The Timberwolves could have had Steph Curry. We could have been making this case for franchise GOAT on a completely other franchise, but no, the 7th overall pick in the draft would go to the Golden State Warriors. And in college, he was a wiry kid who could shoot the lights out of the gym and play point guard at an exceptional level. So they thought they were getting a guy who they could probably develop into an all-star caliber player. What they got was quite literally the best case scenario. In college, he was exceptional, but in the league, he was unstoppable. After putting together a rookie season in which he scored 17.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists, and 1.9 steals in 36 minutes, he would follow it up by averaging 18.6 points per game and 5.8 assists, while also breaking the single-season free throw record at 93%. This season and his next, he struggled a bit with ankle injuries, but showed an incredible amount of promise, only losing out on that Rookie of the Year award to Tyreke Evans and showing that his second season that he probably should have been the Rookie of the Year. But these really wouldn't matter because his next seasons he would deal with some ankle injuries that would sideline him for a couple of games and for most of the lockout shortened season. Now, injuries had kind of followed Steph Curry around for a while, and he had made a name for himself in that regard on always sort of suffering from ankle injuries. But this didn't matter to the Golden State Warriors. They offered him an extension because they knew that this guy was the real deal, and he would show them just that, because in 2012, he would do two very important things that would begin to establish him as a very special player. First of all, he would join forces with Klay Thompson and establish the Splash Bros, and also in doing so, set the all-time three-point record on 53 less attempts than Ray Allen, proving early that Curry might be the real deal in the conversation of the best shooters ever. That season, he would lead the Warriors to the playoffs and average 23.4 points per game, leading them to the Western Conference semifinals. If this season had been the trailer, then 2013 would officially introduce Stephen Curry to the masses. He would average 24 points per game and 8.5 assists, becoming the 9th player in NBA history to do so, while also leading the league in three-point makes for the second season in a row. He would also surprisingly be second in the league in triple-doubles with 4, and also make his first All-Star appearance as well as an All-NBA second-team nod. Now, these guys were the real deal, but how would they fare in the playoffs? Well, this was a memorable 7-game series that they would eventually lose to the Clippers, but it didn't matter because people realized that this Warriors team was no fluke. They weren't like the teams that sort of would crop up and fall apart in a couple of years. They had the makings of a potential dynasty, and this would mark a huge turning point for the Dubs in basically turning them from a team that was good but great to a team that was exceptional to unstoppable. The next 5 years, Steph Curry would become a top 3 player in the NBA, winning back-to-back MVPs and being the first unanimous winner in history during the 2016 season, in which the Warriors would go on to win an NBA record 73 games. He would win 3 championships in this span, showing us undoubtedly that he was the most elite three-point shooter of all time easily, and also showing us that the guy literally could not be stopped. He could hit from everywhere on the court. Watching him run around like a maniac with limitless stamina and hit 3 after 3 after 3 had fan bases in shambles during his prime. I personally know people who broke down because they just simply could not understand how this guy could not miss. He simply was not able to be stopped. It was bonkers. And even crazier, even when Kevin Durant played on his team, he was still getting doubled because he simply was that much of an offensive threat that it was more advantageous to keep him locked down than to keep Kevin Durant locked down. That is how much of an offensive genius Stephen Curry is, and even to show, reinforce how greater he is, he won a 4th championship and solidified himself as arguably the greatest point guard of all time. It's a pretty big competition between him and Magic, but honestly, I would pick either one, sort of depending on how my team needed to be created. If I needed an offensive point guard, I would pick Steph Curry 10 out of 10 times. The guy is unstoppable. He is genuinely one of the most offensively gifted players we have ever seen and easily the greatest shooter of all time. I mean, the guy's nuts. He can literally run around the court for 15 seconds straight, get the ball, double tap, step back, hit it from outer space. The fate of the universe on the line, and I need one shot to make. As much as I love Andre Iguodala, I'm picking Steph Curry because the dude is lights out. He is absolutely nuts. And to show this even more, let me show you how his stats compare to Wilt Chamberlain. Arguably my pick is the only legendary player good enough to go up against him. As you can see, Steph has him beat in every single category. From points to win shares to championships, Steph Curry is in every single way, shape, and form the greatest player to ever put on a Golden State jersey, and it will likely stay that way forever. And he's also an all-time player. He is easily top 20 of all time. Let's not act like he's not. We can be haters all we want. He's easily top 20 all time, and inarguably one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. So what do you guys think about this episode of Case for Franchise GOAT? I told you it was going to be a long one, and this is the longest one to date. I didn't actually expect it to be this long, but I'm not really surprised. There are a lot more players, and you can even just imagine how an episode like the Celtics, Lakers, or Knicks are going to go. So those ones are going to be huge episodes. They might even be two-parters. I'm not entirely sure. But if you like the episode, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It takes me a lot of time to make these, and I really enjoy making them for you guys. So if you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Click on the bell, drop me a comment, tell me who you want in the next episode below. The poll will be going out. Remember, you can go to the community tab and see all the polls. So after you finish watching this episode, go to that community tab and check who you think is the greatest player in franchise history. I'm just kidding. It's literally just going to be Steph Curry. It's not really an argument for this one, but I will put a different poll this time on who do you think is the greatest point guard of all time between Steph Curry and Magic Johnson. So that'll be the poll for this week. If you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe like I said before. Watch out for the next poll asking which teams you guys want, so you guys can vote for next week, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Even though I feel like I'm forgetting something, I just get this slithery feeling like I'm missing a certain all-time player. Oh yeah, that's right. It's Bernard King. That's who it is. No, it's Kevin Durant. Look, he's not on the list because me personally, I feel like he was just there. Like he existed on that team. Didn't really do much besides like score. That was literally his only job. His only job on that team was to score because the team was already perfect before. He just joined and just became unstoppable. So I feel like he's not really deserving of being on this list. Yes, he has finals MVPs. I do not care. I personally believe that Kevin Durant does not deserve to be on this list. If you think he does, put it in the comment section below. I personally don't think he does. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch y'all in the next episode, and have a good one. Peace.